Hello, boys and girls. Today we're going to talk about this target, how to find the common denominator of fractions in order to compare fractions. And if you look in the upper right-hand corner, whenever you see that little W in the circle, W is going to stand for right, so please write whatever you see on that slide into your binders. So if you have to pause the video to do that at various times, please make sure you do that and copy down our target for today. Okay, I'm going to open with this question, and you'll notice that you don't see the little W in the corner for right, so you don't have to write this down, but I want you to think about it, and we'll work on it together. Would you rather have 2/3 or 3/4 of chocolate? Okay, think about a chocolate bar. As long as you're not allergic to chocolate, this could be a good thing to try to know if somebody was asking you this question and try to get more of it. Okay, if you look at the bottom there, I took a shape of a chocolate bar, just a rectangle, and the first shape I just divided into 3 parts. That's a denominator, and we could shade in 2 of them. Okay, and we get 2/3. And the other chocolate bars showing 3/4. Okay, now you could shade them in and try to estimate and line them up and figure it out, but there's a mathematical way we're going to learn today how to do it, so we'll make sure we're accurate rather than just estimating. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So here we have a W in the upper right hand corner in a circle, so we're going to want to write this down. So you can let the video play as I talk about these steps, or you could pause it and write them down, whichever is your preference. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about them, but you can pause and play the video as you're comfortable. Okay. The first step, to compare 2/3 to 3/4, and by compare we're just seeing which one is greater or less than, or maybe they're equal to each other in size. We want to find the least common denominator. Second step, we want to create equivalent fractions with the new denominator. And the third step, we're going to compare numerators, and you'll see how all this works. Okay, so let's talk about the first step, find the least common denominator. And I just want to underline the LCD, because you'll often see that acronym in reference to finding the least common denominator. And this should sound a little familiar because before the break in December, we tried to find the least common multiple, least common multiple, and we called that the LCM. Now we're seeing a purpose to finding the least common multiple instead of just doing it and then ending it there. We're going to find a least common multiple of these 2 numbers here, which are in specific places. They're in the denominator of fractions. Okay? And we're going to then go to step number 2 here in the blue. Okay, so we could do the same steps we did for least common multiple. We can just start listing multiples of each of these denominators, okay, one at a time. And be careful, multiples are different than factors. A lot of students get those 2 things mixed up. Multiples are just counting by those numbers, starting with the number itself, okay? So with 3, we want to start with 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Generally, you want to list like 5 or 6 until you have a match, okay? And we'll see when we have a match once we do 4. Multiples of 4, we want to start with 4, 8, 12, 16. Oh, I can stop because look, I see I have a match, okay? I have a 12 up here and a 12 up here. So we would call that our LCD, our least common denominator. Okay, so that's all of step 1. Step 2, we're going to create equivalent fractions with this new denominator. Okay, you'll see what I mean in a second. So if we take 2/3, just our first fraction up there that we're trying to compare, and we're going to create an equivalent fraction. If you remember a target from 6 weeks ago or so, we talked about creating equivalent fractions. Remember, there was a missing part of the fraction, and how do we figure that part out? And we did something called the do-do rule. So we look at how are we going from 3 to 12, okay? And as you think about it, we'll realize that we're actually timesing 4. 4 3s make 12, and our do-do rule says we have to do the same thing to the top that we did to the bottom. So if we're going to multiply the 3 by 4 to get to 12, we also multiply the 2 by 4 to see what our new numerator is. And 2 times 4 will get us 8. Okay, so 2/3 is equivalent to 8/12. Now, we're going to take this second fraction up here, 3/4. And we're going to do the same process with that. So if we have 3/4, we're going to use 12. We found a common denominator just so we can change both fractions into a denominator of 12. I'm sorry, fractions with a denominator of 12. And you'll see why a little bit later. So we apply the do-do rule again. From 4 to 12, it's increasing, so that means it's multiplying. And 3 4s are going to make 12, so that's times 3. Do-do rule means let's do the same thing to the top. So 4 times 3 down to the bottom is 12. This 3 of the numerator times the 3 gets us 9. So we can say that 3/4 is equivalent to 9/12. Now, the third step is to compare the numerators of the new fractions, or they're still equivalent. 2/3 equals 8/12, but it's got a new denominator, okay? So let's just put them side by side. We're now, instead of writing 2/3, instead of writing 2/3, we're going to use its equivalent fraction of 8/12. Okay? And then again, looking up here at our original 3/4 that we started with, we changed that to an equivalent fraction of 9/12. Okay? And if you want to put a box in the middle to symbolize a greater than or less than or equal to sign missing, we could rewrite it like that. Now we have which is larger, 8/12 or 9/12. And again, step 3, we're just comparing numerators. Once you have a common denominator, all you got to do is look at the numerator. And whichever numerator is bigger will be the larger fraction. So 9 is bigger than 8. Therefore, 9/12 is greater than 8/12. Okay, you can pause the video.